Welcome everyone to an episode of the Ol'Timers comic book show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. As always, joining me this time around, we have the Professor.
Hi, Johnny. How are you?
How are you, sir? How are you? And of course, the same without the 13th Crusader. Buenos dias, senor.
What?
Did I not say it right?
Yo no hablo español.
No, okay. Then. How are you, sir?
I'm very good.
Hey! 13 languages. You think you'd know Spanish, right?
Of course.
Right. Okay. This is a topic we've touched on briefly in the past. So we're going to have another look at it, mainly because the idea is it's so vast. All right, and I don't think one episode is enough to cover the bases on this one. We are talking about replacement heroes. All right. So last time around, if you remember, we talked about Wally West. We talked about Rhodey, Jim Rhodes, and I pulled one from the back pages of God knows every comic book shop everywhere and went with Heather Hudson, which was the new Guardian in Alpha Flight. Preferred choice. I was just like, boo, Alpha Flight, boo. All right, this time around we've gone a little bit more, surely more accessible. So other than the ones we talked about, who are your favorite replacements? Me personally, I think Vince Evans and Charlie White for the Raiders and for the Rams accordingly. There you go. Those were my favorite replacements. Vince Evans, man, he could throw an interception like nobody's business.
Hey, when Brady replaced Bledsoe, that's
that's a good shout. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Marino beat Don Woodley. Yeah, cool. 13, do you want to join in?
There's a lot of there's too many to list.
There's some, there's some interesting ones that actually fall outside the purview of our show. All right?
Well, I got one. Mariano Rivera when he replaced John Wetland.
Oh, yeah.
Took him 13 minutes to come up with it, but hey ho. What was I going to say? So there are some interesting ones that come out outside the purview of our show. Remember, everyone, the show is geared towards comics that are at least 25 years old. All right. So that kind of knocks on the head people like Cassandra Cain. Yeah. I know loads of people love Cassandra Cain, and rightly so. It also knocks on the head Connor Kent, and it may we'd have to double check, but maybe a couple of the Supermen from Reign of Superman. When was that? That might just fall within lines.
So, well, the Reign of the Supermen was more than 25 years ago.
Right. So the Supermen, yes, we can do those, but like the Connor Kent from the Young Justice type show with the black tee and the red set, he's out. Any more notable ones that we can't cover, do you think?
Ultron.
Who?
Ultron consistently gets replaced. He replaces himself.
That's not quite the idea that
I would call that upgrading. But, no, I think, and I think lately, of course, like in the recent past, we've had a ton of replacement heroes at Marvel, where traditionally you really hadn't seen a lot of replacement heroes, and that's due, of course, to the diversity and inclusion initiative over at Marvel, where we see all of a sudden we got Ironheart and Kate Bishop Hawkeye, and basically anybody that you can think of really has been replaced with a diverse or ethnic character. And even if we even go further, because I wanted to bring this up, and this is really kind of out of the purview of our 25-year history here.
Go for it.
But replacement heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe versus just recasting, which to me, I mean, we look at Peter Parker, who's been recast 3 or 4 times, but then we can never have Tony Stark in the Marvel Universe again, or Steve Rogers. So that to me is kind of like
that's why they have the multiverse idea, which is why it's going to work so well.
So
we'll see.
I totally get where you're coming from on this, because but I think Marvel are probably a victim of their own success when it comes to Tony Stark, Thor, and
100%.
The fact, I mean, personally, if you ask me my favorite movie Spider-Man, it's Andrew Garfield. Yeah. I think it just gets the modern
everybody
people
has their
passed it down.
favorite.
Yeah. But I cannot see anybody else playing Steve Rogers.
Right.
That's the thing, and you can't
Right.
see anybody else playing Thor.
Or Tony Stark.
Tony Stark.
I get it. You're right.
Yeah.
They are a victim of their own success, and it's when we look at comics as a whole, and I think that's why replacement heroes is such a great topic to talk about on the show, because I sound like a hypocrite when I say that. I want them to recast, or I can't see anybody playing Steve Rogers or Robert Downey Jr. or playing Tony Stark. But when I go back and I look and I say, oh, when they replaced Tony Stark with Jim Rhodes, I really like that in the comic book, But in the movie, the cinematic universe, I'm like, no, why can't we replace them? Because we can't see anybody else in the role.
If I could chime in for a minute or so
Go
here.
for it. Yeah.
It's much easier to adapt a comic book than a movie, right? With the movie, you have all these complications and trying to cast, and they get older. If they're playing young characters, etc., there's challenges with that. In a comic book, it's easier. But our expertise in the comic book world, right? The word that is usually related to these kind of replacement characters is legacy, right?
Yes.
The legacy is how long can this character last in the world of fiction, right? If you're drawing someone that's a regular, normal human being or writing about it, they can't possibly exist for 80 or 90 years. There has to be something that kind of trips that up here and there. And what's their legacy? Is somebody that's with them good enough to take their place? Also, that's in the story, but you have the creators. Some creators may not have grown up with characters from the golden age, but they're more familiar with the replacements.
I think what happens and what has become now is legacy, which I think we can all agree was is pretty cool. When you think of DC, when I think legacy heroes, I do think like Wally West and Kyle Rayner or whoever. But on the Marvel side, it's become more of a branding than legacy.
Correct.
So that's where I kind of feel like it's a little bit too commercial, where it's become a business. Captain America has become a business. Thor has become a business. It's not just a character anymore. Iron Man's a business.
Batman Inc. I mean, if it's
right there you go. So I think replacement heroes, great topic to talk about for Ol'Timers podcast, but also a hot button topic to talk about for like modern age.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, I've mentioned Cassandra Cain, you mentioned Kate Bishop. Of course, you've got people like Miles Morales. You've got how many different Spider Women have there been?
We just finished watching Ms. Marvel, right? So
and of course we didn't when we talked about the Marvels, we gave her a pass and put Monica Rambeau, who first appeared in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual, which would have fit within the show, but hey, she didn't make the grade on this occasion. So we are going with 3 books as always. We've all picked one. We've all had a look at all 3, and we're going to go. We're going to go alphabetical on this one.
Does that mean I go first?
Yes, it does. Check you out. Yeah, it might be. We'll put my feet up and let you have a conversation. Right, let's have a look. We are going to start off with a classic. And I mean that in every sense of the word, genuinely and sarcastically, all at the same time. This is Avengers number 63. Not just the Avengers, it's the Mighty Avengers from 1969. On Go Collect, you can get this between 103 odd prices, I know, and $400. On eBay, for various grades, you can get it for £12 to £25. It's written by Roy Thomas in his best smiling Stanley style.
Oh, yes.
Gene Colan on art with George Klein on inks. And is it Art Simic is on letters. There's nobody's got a credit for colors on this one. I would assume it was Mary Severin.
I think they were a little embarrassed to have to color, Gene Colan.
Yeah.
Yeah. The colors are terrible. Did you look at the book?
Yeah. Well, I just want to know who the Bondage fan is, but hey ho, we'll get to that when I get there. Right. This is your call, so take it away, please, Professor.
Yeah, I know when we talked about doing replacement heroes, I wanted to kind of switch it up and not go, the obvious, one of the big heroes. But you look at Goliath, right? And Goliath, this is what's Clint Barton is actually known as Goliath 2. Um, but then you also think later on we have Black Goliath, and then we have the villain Goliath that was the original Power Man. And so it is kind of funny when I think about this book, and eventually Hank Pym does come back as Goliath too. Um, but I think the Goliath hero actually had a pretty good legacy here, and as we know, the original Goliath, Hank Pym, changes his persona every few months depending on which way the wind blows. And here, a couple of months earlier, in issue 60, was when Yellow Jacket, or the Hank Pym's new persona, Yellow Jacket, marries the Wasp, and when he comes back here in this issue, he decides to remain as Yellow Jacket. And we see earlier in this issue, right there, Hawkeye has a little crisis of where he thinks he's useless because he tries to save everybody and his bowstring snaps, which is kind of like, I guess a good way of Roy Thomas to say his Hawkeye character is kind of useless in this team of superpowered individuals. This is actually a kind of a weak powered team. If you look at it, you get Hawkeye, Black Panther, Vision, and then Yellow Jacket and Wasp, and that's it. So none of the big three, even though they're on the cover, are not part of the team: Cap, Thor, or Iron Man. And so Hawkeye, thinking that he almost killed the team because of his uselessness. And then when Nick Fury shows up and sends the rest of the Avengers on a mission to save Black Widow, they leave him behind because Hawkeye is in love with Black Widow at this point in time, and they're afraid that he's going to do something to wreck the team, right? Which kind of is just kind of convenient, right? It's kind of convenient plot point to leave Hawkeye by himself. So as soon as Hawkeye leaves, Black Widow comes on the horn and says, "Hey, I'm not really in Russia or wherever they went off to rescue her. I'm here in New York, and come save me." So Hawkeye immediately decides to take the Pym serum and use the conveniently new Goliath costume that Wasp made for Hank, and become the second Goliath. And then, really everything that you think ensues, right? He goes to Coney Island to rescue Black Widow, finds that she's held captive by, of all people, Mad Thinker and Egghead. Weird. And Mad Thinker has an android that is large, and so of course they have a big guy fight in the middle of Coney Island with the android walking around with Black Widow in his hands like a big King Kong kind of take. And then it's pretty straightforward after that. Goliath comes through, beats the android, rescues Black Widow, and then it's a big to be continued next issue. And this, the next issue is where they introduce Clint's or Hawkeye's brother Barney, and I think that was a kind of a big. That is a big issue for Clint. This is a couple of issues here where they actually really do some fleshing out of his character, some growth.
Literally.
And and this is really the kind of the first time where, I think in Marvel, really, where you see an already established hero take on a new identity other than Hank, right? So I think that this book works for me, and Clint stays as Goliath through issue 100. I think he comes back from Kree-Skrull War and returns to his Hawkeye persona, but that's like 3 years down the road here. So and Hawkeye, who is one of my favorite Avengers, seeing him as a different character, not using a bow. I mean, I could take or leave him as Goliath, but I think it's a good kind of growth for this for the character. And it's one of those things Roy does all the time anyway. Roy,
Mm.
rather than introducing a new character, would much rather revamp or
Yeah.
change an existing character. So yeah, I mean, not your. This is kind of like an out of the box replacement hero.
Yeah.
But you know,
I will say you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 on this, really, if you think about it.
because you get a Yellow Jacket too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, you're getting, Hank's giving up Goliath to become Yellow Jacket full time,
Mm-hmm.
and Hawkeye's turning into Goliath. So it's a twofer.
Yep.
It's a twofer. There you go. 13th, what did you think of this book? I think this is, if I remember correctly, you quite like this era of Avengers, right?
I do. Again, I am a fan of Roy Thomas, as is many other people. And
Uh-huh.
again, I've always said that I've liked his work on Invaders and All Star Squadron. So what you just said, Bud, is exactly on point. Where Roy Thomas is a master of revamping things, because that's exactly what he did with those other runs I mentioned.
Yep.
Mm,
Gene Colan, I like his work more in Amazing Spider-Man years down the road.
mhm.
However,
Yeah,
you know,
I neglected to mention Gene Colan's art. It
yeah,
suffers here from the coloring.
agreed. So when I look at this, I'm like, is that really Gene Colan? But we got to remember too that this was years well before his Amazing Spider-Man art that I like in the early '80s. So
Tomb of Dracula for me.
yeah,
Batman
yeah,
for me.
There you go.
yep. So um, I did kind of laugh with this a little bit. The cover, I think, it's an awesome cover. There's no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And I kind of view this as an almost solo Hawkeye story, almost,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
right? Because the focus was primarily on Hawkeye, at least towards the middle of the book.
Hmm.
There's a lot of funny things that I could kind of read, like his bow snapped, and they go in the mansion, and Hank Pym is literally telling everyone why he's not going to be Goliath anymore,
Hmm.
because it's dangerous, and it was causing him to go a little bit schizo, as he put it. So when the time arises, oh, I know what I can do. Let me go and take the exact thing that Hank Pym was saying is dangerous to take, his
Mm-hmm.
uh his liquid Viagra there, so he can grow. So the suit also is horrendous, the design.
Oh, it's terrible.
And it's funny because, there's a running joke in the comics community with how many costumes and how many identities have Hank Pym and the Wasps together combined have had.
Yep.
So is this one of the ones that Hank Pym wouldn't dare to wear?
Yeah.
So, but
Oh.
looking at it from a Hawkeye perspective, I agree what you said, Bud, that Hawkeye at this point, um, he was starting to build that legacy, but just being part of the Avengers. And now there's that abrupt turn where he's going to take on a whole new identity as Goliath and have experience with superpowers. So he's a normal being now, pulling his weight, per se, with the Avengers. So the Avengers lineup was suffering in a way from that powerhouse, other than Thor and Iron Man. Well, how do we fix that and yet still give you a different lineup? So you can do that with Hawkeye now, aka Goliath, but still keep an original member in Hank Pym behind,
Mm-hmm.
along with the Wasps, who are now married. So it's an interesting era for Avengers history, and I can recall years down the road from this point in West Coast Avengers where Hawkeye was talking about his time as Goliath, right? Because at that time Hank
Mm.
Pym was retired, quote unquote, but brought back on board to help with the West Coast Avengers, and it was something that came up, his experience as Goliath. In a way, and I know it sounds ironic, but it helped Hawkeye grow as a character,
Hmm.
not just during this era, but it survived with him
Right.
years down the road.
Well, if you
So
remember the first couple of issues of West Coast Avengers, Goliath was the evil Goliath was in there
yeah,
as one of the villains in Grim Reaper's Lethal Legion there.
and that was confusing as hell, because by the time you get to the '80s, you had to keep track of all the identities or personas that Yellow Jacket kept Hawkeye, when he's like, oh, I remember I was Goliath too. And then, is it Eric Jolson, I think is his name, the
Eric,
original Power Man?
yeah, Justin, yeah.
And then he's coming around, wrecking the Avengers compound, and you're like, oh, so I don't remember him as Power Man, because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that much action as Power Man. but now he's the third Goliath at that. So it
Well,
was a lot.
there's like, and that guy he was Power Man, and then he was the smuggler, and then he was Goliath.
Right.
So
it's a lot to keep track of in a short period of time. But ultimately, Hawkeye wins out, and I think he has much more of a following today than he did maybe back in this era.
Oh, well, yeah, with the movies and the show, of course.
Correct.
I read this book this morning. I don't know if I was feeling grouchy, but I didn't think the writing was up to much. I think it's written. Roy Thomas is doing his best Stan Lee impersonation, and it just doesn't work. All the nicknames for all the characters, it's like, oh my god, it's like killing me. And when Yellow Jacket's kind of trying to explain what's going on with him, it's like, you're telling me it's a comic book. You could show me, Some of the language is dated massively. Going schizo, for example, and then the whole tricked me into getting married.
Yep. I was going to mention that too. There's like, kind of some stale, like, of its time. Did we say that on the last?
Yeah, I think that's the phrase that pays on this one. Yeah. Definitely, I think it's of a simpler time, or less informed time, shall we say? That's probably a better way of saying it. And it shows in today's rereading if you've got like today's head on. That said, who can argue with this page? I mean, look how much fishnets are going on in this page. It's like, why didn't the Black Widow keep this costume? That's what I want to know. Because this works better than the other one.
My problem with this particular page was I was wondering if Gene Colan had ever taken a look at Kirby's artwork on, but that's not the Mad Thinker on that bottom panel. I don't know who he's drawing there. And Egghead is supposed to have an egghead, not just be a bald professor guy.
He's got some Dicko hands going on there. Dicko fingers. Dicko fingers. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I don't think that this is Colan's strongest work, and I think maybe it might have been a rush job. In fact, Colan's whole run on Avengers is kind of forgettable. But I kind of think it was because that they couldn't really use that much blacks because Avengers is supposed to be a colorful book, and you can even tell some of the backgrounds are the blue and the yellow and everything else that they're using in the book really kind of goes it works against Colan as far as his like making his artwork pop. And
I'm still voting for that Black Widow costume. That's all I'm saying.
she's got so much fishnets that are on her arms too.
Yeah. So I mean,
no wonder he grew.
Yeah. Woo. Look what I've got in these. So I know we say as of its time quite a lot in this show, and as we expect, I suppose we are talking about books from bygone eras, but it is startling how dramatically insensitive the writing is on this. And when I think you talk about Gene Colan's not being the best, this isn't the best example of his art. I'd say exactly the same for Roy Thomas. This isn't the best example of Roy Thomas's writing in any shape, way, or form.
Maybe too much of an editorial hand.
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, who edited it? Because Roy Thomas was the editor at the time too, and he was.
Let's have a look, because I have the book, as you can see. I'll go to the credits page. We have Stan Lee as editor. That's who's credited there.
Did he really edit it? That's what I'm thinking. That's at this period of time that Marvel was notorious for the editors not really editing. The writers were self-editing themselves, and we've known that from talking to Steve Englehart. They weren't nobody was editing them at the time.
I don't think the Vision sounds like the Vision at all.
Oh no, of course not. But you know what? At the time, this is what Vision sounded like. Roy created Vision, and Vision talked like this and didn't have those mechanical word bubbles that they started using until a few issues after this was when they started turning his word bubbles yellow and kind of making him sound more like a robot. But here, he sounded like the Human Torch, the original Torch.
So when he first appeared, he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then a few issues like, "Are you doing?"
Yep, exactly.
That's pretty weird.
There you go. That is the first one done. You know what? for what it was, I did quite enjoy it for the fact that it's an older comic book. You know, you've gotta park your brain and take your brain out and move back 40 years
Yep.
to
It's
to get
it's
it.
kind of like reading a history book, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. But it did make me. Um, I will say this for those that are interested: reading that book is still more enjoyable than reading the current Avengers stuff. Just saying. Just
Machine,
saying.
It
one of
is.
the best lines I've ever heard you say.
There you go.
Honestly, I enjoyed this book because it brought back fond memories of how much I loved West Coast Avengers when
Mm.
Hawkeye was leading the team. So this
Yep.
is a nice refresher of Hawkeye's
Yep.
his legacy and how he arrived to that point.
His character has regressed poorly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's not on point, is what you're saying.
That is exactly what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
you saying you got the shaft?
He is
Yeah,
not hitting the mark.
yeah,
He's saying that his actions all of a quiver.
yeah, exactly.
Oh my god! Right, we'll take a quick break before we get into books 2 and 3. You know what? We've just done a Marvel book. It makes sense, right? It's no prize. The No Prize podcast, where you'll see everything from the Marvels books, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and of course Disney Plus. And don't forget, one of my favorite parts of that show is the 2 minute warning. So if you want to find
It
out
is.
what's coming up, check out that. That doesn't mean you can fast forward to the last 2 minutes of the show. Don't be like that now.
No, you're gonna see what's coming up.
Yeah, you gotta see the arguments. Now that a certain show's finished, maybe we won't have that anymore. But
How do we get there from here?
well, we'll find a way, I'm sure. Right, next up is the 13th choice, and a little bit more modern than the Avengers book. This is Batman 512, first part of the whole Prodigal storyline. It's written by Doug Moench. I'm sorry if I've said it wrong. Art by Mike Gustovich and Romeo Tanghal. I probably said that wrong as well. Colors by Adrian Roy. Letters by Ken Brusniak. And I don't normally do this, but one of the things I love about this mini era of Batman is the covers by Mike Manley. So, cover by Mike Manley. There you go. 13th, this was your choice. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, so the whole topic of today's show are replacements, and in this case, one of the greatest legacy characters of all time in Batman himself. Now we're stepping into the world of Batman's only human. Can he possibly last forever? So,
Yes.
well, of course we can. We can stretch him out for years and years and create infinite stories for him. But part of the Batman mythos is that he took on Dick Grayson as a partner in Robin very early on. And we arrived to a point in the 90s where there was just a lot of stuff brewing around with DC. You know, you had Zero Hour was going on, Nightfall had happened for Batman. It was busy. It was a busy time early in the or mid 90s, you could say. So
Mm.
Prodigal is a story that got stuck like probably right after Nightfall and Zero Hour, where there was enough stuff happening. You know, everybody knows the Nightfall story by now, where pretty much Batman got his ass kicked and he had a replacement in Azrael. So we're not talking about Azrael today.
Thank God for that. When you picked this, I was like, please don't let this be a Nazbats book.
Yeah, I love Asbats. However, sometimes I feel like the Prodigal storyline gets overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I forgot it happened. Just
yeah,
being serious. Yeah.
so that proves my point right there. So the Prodigal storyline focuses on a replacement for Batman other than Asbats or the John Paul Valley Azrael who became Batman and went nuts. This focuses on Dick Grayson, kind of like, hey Batman, why in the world did you pick Azrael to replace you, guy you barely knew, who went nuts and caused a lot of tension and really punished criminals and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
When you had Dick Grayson the entire time, who at this point obviously was well established as Nightwing.
Mm-hmm.
So Prodigal was a crossover event within the Batman books, which I thought was neat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was a 12-parter, so you had to hang in there, every week when these books were released across different Bat titles. So it kind of made sense to tie in all the Bat books together. And if you were able to do that, you actually get a good story out of it. So it's pretty simple. Batman is like, look, I just reclaimed my name and my reputation as Batman. I beat Bane, I put him away. However, there's still an aftermath that's left because of what Bane did, releasing all the criminals of Gotham. But I need a break. This was a lot for me.
Mm.
So I can see that. So this makes sense right there, the way the foundation starts off with the story. But hey, Gotham needs its Batman. So this time I'm turning to you, Dick Grayson, because I
Mm-hmm.
know you can handle the job. I know that you're responsible. He's been a team leader of the Titans. Again, established himself as Nightwing. He knows the drill and he knows how Batman thinks. They have a
Mm-hmm.
very a father-son relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So makes sense. When you talk about legacy and then you have sidekicks, which is another thing that we've covered,
Mm-hmm.
someday you think, is the sidekick going to be good enough to replace their partner? So we've seen that with the Flash. So here's this approach with Batman. This is your actual in canon chance to see Dick Grayson as Batman. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think this story uh, slips under the radar because I feel like Nightfall gets much more attention than Prodigal does,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even Zero Hour. There are people that know their
Oh,
enough DC to know about Zero Hour, love it
I
or hate it,
love
but they know
I
it
love Zero Hour.
existed.
I
Yeah.
love Zero Hour.
So throughout the storyline, this is it. This is the Robin grown into Nightwing Batman taking on the criminals like Killer Croc. The ventriloquist comes along the line in the storyline. Two-Face is prominent here in the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
But for this particular issue, it just focuses on like Batman. I know you're picking me to do this. I should be ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
But you hear a lot of Dick Grayson challenging himself, like,
Yeah.
holy cow, like this is it. And now
Holy
the role,
Rhythm Batman.
yeah, exactly. Like now he's Batman.
Yeah.
And he's that's kind of like a shock to him. However, his partner now, the Tim Drake Robin, I think just makes it much better because
Mm.
the legacy of the Robins itself was tainted with Jason Todd,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it caused trauma. It changed Bruce for many years, and now you have Tim Drake, who also was reluctant to become. He wanted to be a Robin, but when he got the Robin outfit on, he just started questioning himself, kind of like Dick Grayson was questioning himself here. Am I
Yeah.
really ready for this? Because how can I ever replace Batman? You
Mm-hmm.
can't. So it's interesting because during the Nightfall storyline, even Commissioner Gordon's like, "You're not him," when
Yeah.
he's talking to
Event-
Azrael.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually. And so this happens again. So even Commissioner Gordon is starting to get wise to what the hell is going on. And in the world of Gotham, this was happening for a good part of the 90s,
Mm.
where you had different guys in the bat suit. You had a different Robin. You kind of got to watch him grow up. And it's honestly, it's one of my favorite eras of Batman, only because of the group of creators. They were pretty much in tune with Batman,
Mm-hmm.
even though you had a different writer and artist on one Bat title, and same for all the other ones. It was still cohesive. It blended well when they needed to, but then they were
Mm-hmm.
also strong enough to tell good solo stories. So this is a treat for Bat fans. This era of the Batman mythos. And
Cool.
like I said, the Prodigal storyline of Dick Grayson actually becoming Batman for 12 issues until Bruce felt like he was ready to come back, I think kind of gets swept under the rug. And for those who are curious of why Batman left, like I said, he needed a break. But later on in No Man's Land, we learned that he was actually preparing for another Bane type scenario
Mm.
were it to ever happen. But I like this for Dick Grayson. Again, it's another step for him. He does eventually go back to being Nightwing, but this was a test run, is how
Yeah.
I like to call it, of him being Batman. And years later, that they had their title with a Dick Grayson Batman and Damian Wayne Robin,
Yep.
which
Yep.
actually did pretty well. So
Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
yeah.
Cool. Before we hear from the professor, let's go through some stats. This is from 1994. Go Collect have this book at $34. eBay has it for anywhere between £1.25 and £3 for all you folks in the UK. There you go. Cool. Professor, your take on this book and Prodigal. If you any comments to add to that as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't lying when I told you I totally had forgotten about this storyline, and I think that was part of the reason why I wasn't really buying Dick Grayson as Batman in this issue. I think I remember very well the John Paul Valley Batman and Nightfall. And I remember by the end of Nightfall, really, 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 really wanting Bruce Wayne back in the suit.
Yeah.
I didn't like Jean Paul Valley as Batman because he went kind of psycho. I was just like, it kind of did kind of drag on a little bit. I was like, can this just end already? And then it ended, and then I was ready for Bruce Wayne to come back, but then no, we have Dick. So I remember now being kind of upset. I was like, man, I wanted Bruce Wayne back as Batman, and now I don't get it. So there was no payoff. But rereading this, I'm just like, it is what it is at the time of its time.
Yeah.
So
There's that phrase again.
yeah.
I was buying Batman and Detective Comics for at the time of Nightfall, and then from that came Catwoman, and of course the Asbats. I agree with the professor. The Asbats thing just went on too long. It went on so much that I would pretty much not. I'd buy Batman and Detective, but I probably wouldn't read them. I'd like look at the covers and think, "Oh, look, there's Kelly Jones' cover. Great, fantastic." I was much more interested in the whole fake Bruce Wayne looking for Chandra Kinsolving storyline than this one. So that's a Knight's Quest storyline, which is between Nightfall and Night's End. So I'm with the professor. I was like, right, he's done. He's ready. Come on, bring it on. Woohoo! And then we got to Grayson for a while. And I was a bit miffed, but it works story-wise. I think Doug Moench, the whole host of writers at this time were bang on point. You had Alan Grant, you had Chuck Dixon in there, you've got Doug Moench himself. So they were absolutely fabulous as a unit. What lets this book down is the art. The art is just it just doesn't know what it wants to be. It's too much trying to be either someone like Tom Lyle, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, versus someone who's trying to go for some like image style curve. I mean, the picture we've got there, Batman throwing his batarang, is pretty cool, but by the same token, we also have some hideous panels. Excuse me. We have some hideous panels there. And when Croc comes out of the sewer in the first place, where was that panel? Is it the one before that one? Yeah, there. Just none of it. So for me, the art kind of spoiled it, which was kind of the knock for me at Batman for this. Mike Manley covers are great. Norm Brayfogle was no longer on the book. We were waiting for Kelly Jones to come onto the Bat book, and that changed up massively. I do like the fact that Gordon knows it's not Bruce or knows it's not his Batman again. And I think that kind of sets a tone for the relationship between Gordon and Batman for a while. But for a Bat book, yeah, story wise, I think this is a great example of how you can read a good story and not mind the bad art. Whereas in some books you get great art and the story's pants.
So even back then, it's like this was, if you remember, there was probably like 6 different Bat titles going on at this time.
Yeah.
And just to, with Batman Detective, with Shadow of the Bat, we had
Legends of the Dark Knight.
Robin's a bad book if you think about it.
Yeah, and then
Robert,
Catwoman too
yeah,
at the time too. So it was a bunch of these books, and so I think the quality suffers over time when you get so many books. You know, I think it's like
The
watered down.
the only advantage with this was with the releasing under the different titles. The story is published or released into the wild quicker
mm,
across the bad titles. If you were to read this all in a row, like with all the issues in a row, the art varies, yeah, so it can throw you off. I you know the main reason why I like this as a replacement story is because it wasn't a permanent replacement. It was something that gets swept under the rug and forgotten about. It's also Dick Grayson and Batman, and it's a test drive.
mm,
Yes.
And when it was being released, it was fairly quick, within a year. So it's
mm,
not like with before we were talking about Hawkeye, where those changes were, well, guess what? You're stuck with him through almost Avengers issue 100 from issue 63.
mm,
That spans over a long time. Whereas this, you're getting all of this within that year in
mm.
94.
Yeah.
So if you were not a fan of this, at least you could breathe a sigh of relief and say, okay, it's a 12 issue storyline.
Yeah,
When they're
that's
done, we'll
that's
get back to what's, Batman said he's coming back. So they tell
Mhm.
you that right off from the beginning. So, but this also raises that question of why we're talking about this subject on today's show is the replacement. Like, so you're talking Dick Grayson, the greatest sidekick ever, or the original sidekick, becoming his mentor or going into his mentor's role as Batman. But
uh,
it's not permanent. So it brings up the discussion. And I remember talking about this with my friends back then. If it was going to be anybody, it should have always been Dick Grayson.
but this is an interesting point that would ring just close this one out. I think
Mhm.
you're absolutely you're right to a point. You absolutely are right to a point. But it's who replaces Batman? The answer isn't Dick Grayson. The answer is Robin replaces
Mhm.
Batman. Because if
Right.
you look back, you've also a little bit more recently than we like to discuss. Tim Drake's been a Batman. Jason Todd's been a Batman. Damian Wayne's been a Batman. What do all three have in common?
They were all Robins.
Exact. Carrie Kelly's been a Batwoman.
Right.
Yeah, they're all being Robins. So I get where you're coming from on that one. I really do. Well, part of me kind of agrees with you. It should be Dick Grayson, but logically, it's going to be a Robin that replaces Batman, not any particular one of them. But yeah, does that make sense? Not a specific one.
No, it absolutely does.
A fair
Yeah,
point.
cool. Yeah, cool. Excellent. Oh, I got a fair point. Woohoo! Count that as a win. Yeah, baby.
But that's the very definition of legacy heroes too, right? I mean,
Correct.
we talk about legacy heroes. The legacy hero is someone that is trained to become that.
And the
Yeah.
beauty of Dick Grayson not staying as Batman permanently is that he had his own established identity as Nightwing.
Mm,
This is after he evolved from Robin,
mm.
which was also, to me, a legacy character in itself.
So then the question to ponder
Mhm.
is Nightwing a replacement for Dick Grayson as Robin? Just to ponder.
I look at it more as an evolutionary thing,
Yeah,
that Dick
that-
Grayson
yeah.
couldn't stay a kid forever.
That's
So they had to
that
do something.
yeah, I agree with that, to be fair. I agree with that one. Right, okay. He's already been mentioned once or twice. For my choice, we're going back a little bit further than 94. We are going to the daunting times of 1991, and this is Robin 1. Robin Volume 1, number 1. And it's one of 5. It's a mini series. On eBay, you can get this for around £2.50. Go collect it, it's around $55. Why are comics so expensive in the States? I don't understand.
Taxes.
I don't get
I
it,
don't
man.
I'm coming to your comic book store.
So this is written by Chuck Dixon, art by Tom Lyle, ink by Bob Smith, letters by Tim Harkins, and colors by Adrian Roy, who at the time was the colorist for DC Comics.
Mhm.
Right, so this book would eventually lead to an ongoing Robin series, although it would take 3 mini-series to do that. Because there's the Joker's Wild and there's the Cry of the Huntress as well, so they're all in
There's
there.
a lot of hologram covers in the
Yeah.
Robin's future.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Marvel, for doing that. Appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Um, I I like this idea of Robin. You, since you mentioned it before, you've got Tim in the suit, and now he's doubting himself, similar to how Dick's would eventually. Remember, this comes before the book we've just looked at.
Mhm.
So Tim, sorry, so Dick doubting himself in the suit is a mirror of this. So there we go. Um, I like how it's a slow burner. It's not just boom. There you go. You've got the suit. Going to be Robin. We're getting kind of like this trend that we all like about when Legends of the Dark Knight first started about it's Batman at his earliest adventures and
Mhm.
we like that sort of stuff. And this is us seeing the evolution of Tim Drake as he moves into his Robin. He has a bit of a cast to deal with. He's got Lady Shiva, he's got King Snake down the line, he's got the CIA agent that he saves. Of course, he's got Lynx as well, which is his fan fatale. What I like the most about this is Chuck Dixon's writing. Chuck Dixon was one of the Batman writers of the 90s. And if you saw his name on a book, you knew it was going to be good standard. It had lots of history in there, and it had lots of character moments. Um, Alfred and Tim absolutely love it. Calls him Alfie and all that sort of stuff. It's good to see Alfred shows what he was for Master Bruce because we didn't get to see it, did we? When Alfred's first introduced, it's like boom, he's there and whatnot. Um, it is safe to say this isn't Tim Drake's first appearance. I'll put out for guesses. Tim Drake's first appearance. Anyone want to take a guess?
No.
It was a lonely
13?
place of dying, I think. As
It was
Robin or as Tim Drake?
as Tim Drake.
Okay, that I don't remember off the top of my head.
Tim Drake first appearance was Batman 436.
Mhm.
If back in 1989. There you go. His first Robin didn't come much later after that. Um,
But you
and
knew when they first introduced him that he was going to be the new Robin.
Right.
yeah, but they did it well. They took the time. They didn't just rush it like they did with Jason. Story wise, he goes off to Paris to learn some martial arts, some hockey socky stuff. Falls afoul of the Karate Kid style beatings as you'd expect. Meets a girl, has to be the hero, fails miserably, and apparently is the only American who travelled to Paris with blue hair that doesn't get recognised in the Robin suit. Again, some nice Batman-y stuff here. Where he's in the warehouse. Things are afoot with this book. It's a good opening issue for a really enjoyable 5-issue run. To be honest, I really enjoyed it. But cool, Professor. What was your take on Robin #1?
I remember loving this book when I first got it. I loved Tim Drake as the new Robin.
Mm-hmm.
This coming after, I don't know, like pretty much hot on the heels, really, of them killing off Jason Todd. Within a year, I think, right, or within 2 years that they introduced Tim Drake, and well, maybe not. Robin gets his own series 2 years later, right?
Hold on. So let's see. So Jason
87.
gets killed.
Is
Yeah,
it 87?
Jason gets. Is it 423? Is it?
I think it was 2.5 years later,
Yeah. Well,
give or take.
still of course, in my history, it's hot on the heels. But
428. Sorry, 428 was 5 out. Yeah.
I remember liking Tim Lyle on this book. I thought the art was good. We might disagree on that now.
No, I thought it was all right at the time as well.
Yeah, and rereading this book, it felt very much in the middle of the book, like the Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's I was reading it and I was like, oh, he's getting bullied. Oh, okay, it's the Karate Kid, and then he's going to learn martial arts and probably kick this guy's butt later. I can't really remember how this turns out, but no, I thought it was good. Batman's only in here as much as he needs to be right at the beginning to kind of send him off. So that it's going to be a solo book. It's not going to be Robin, even though Batman's throughout it, right? So So Batman's only in here for the first couple of pages, and then of course Alfred is the father figure for a couple of pages there too. This is really kind of good, and Chuck Dixon is great, like you said. Great on Batman, great on Robin, great on Punisher when he was writing that.
Great on Catwoman, great on Birds of Prey. Everyone forgets that Chuck Dixon was on Birds of Prey because everyone hears Birds of Prey and they think Gail Simone.
Yeah. So yeah, this book really was, I think, was a sign of things to come, and I think it was the first. Tim Drake really is the first Robin that really owns Robin. Like Dick Grayson evolved, like you said, evolved into Nightwing, but Tim Drake as Robin was the first one that I think was like, wow, this could be a cool, like, adult hero or a cool teen hero. That wasn't really questioning too much and just being almost like a hero on par with Batman. He was just as good a detective, right? We pretty much found out.
Yeah.
That was his strength. It wasn't his ability to kick butt. It was his ability to problem solve, which Dick Grayson, I mean, obviously more of a physical type Robin, and this one was more of a mental type Robin, which I actually thought was much cooler.
Well, it alludes to that, doesn't he, at the start of the book where he says, "I'm not street tough."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool. 13th. We've had an opportunity to speak to Chuck Dixon, haven't we, a couple of times?
Oh yeah.
Man, what a blast he is!
Absolutely.
What a good guy.
Absolutely.
What a good
And
guy.
you know, in a way, I almost feel spoiled in this era of Batman because there was just so many things happening. You know, you had, as we said earlier, Dick Grayson, the evolution into Nightwing. You had Jason Todd. People hated Jason Todd. You got a chance to vote for him to live or die. Obviously, people voted for him to die. I'm one of them. And you know,
I would have
and then,
voted twice. Just
yeah.
letting you
Oh
know.
man, I wish if I only had more quarters in my pocket, I would have kept calling. But you know, nobody liked Jason Todd, but everybody loved the concept and idea of Robin. But they knew by then, everybody knew by then, you just can't have Dick Grayson devolve back into Robin. So what's the solution? You have Tim Drake. And not only is Tim Drake, like you guys said, they were slowly rolling him out, right? They learned from Jason. They learned from Dick Grayson and how everybody reacted to that. So there was a lot to pull and reference to say, okay, how do we approach it this time? So we have, while that's baking, you're also looking at an evolution in comics of crime fighting for Batman. It's not just about showing up and hitting people so hard that the effects are spelled out for you in midair. You know, there's a detective element to that.
Pow.
Correct. And that's what I loved about Chuck Dixon's writing. Not only is he bringing you actual detective stories, he's actually also showing you how these characters interact, how they grow up, which we're going to see with Tim Drake. It begins here with him as Robin, and it was done so well that the Tim Drake Robin lasted for many, many, many years. And even when he kind of evolved into something else, his persona as Red Robin, you still felt that it was Tim Drake there. So it all starts here. And as I said to Chuck Dixon himself, he had the keys to Gotham, and this is just one example of what he was building in Gotham City for this time period. Lady Shiva in this book, to me, anytime she's in a book, it's a plus, right? Because the first thing you think of is one of the world's greatest martial artists. What are we going to see that, or are we not? Because just as she is such a deadly fighter, she's also very cunning and manipulative. So you get a taste of that in here, and you're like, oh my God, is Tim Drake going to go up against her or something like that? Because he can't even hold a candle to her, never mind anyone else.
Yeah.
But it just gives you that sense of speculation when this first arrives in your hands. You're like, wow, look at this. It's Chuck Dixon writing it. Look at the cover. It's an awesome cover by Brian Boland. So the same artist that did The Killing Joke. You can see right away, even if you don't know him by name, you can tell with the way he drew Batman on this. I was like, okay, this is going to be cool, but you're also cautious because you've been down this road at this point with Robins.
That's a
right?
shout. That's a good call. I think this was a slow burner for me. I'm with you on this. I picked up issue 1. But it wasn't until issue 3 that I was like, man, this book's really good.
Yeah, if it wasn't for this series, honestly, I don't think I would have ever accepted Tim Drake as a Robin. But
Yeah.
you know what? Not only did I accept him, I was grateful for him because that's how much I hated Jason Todd and still do. So, but again, like why are we at this point? It's because they wanted to show that Dick Grayson grew up. You can't have him become Robin. You tried another Robin and people hated that and you had to
Mhm.
kill him. So what are we gonna do? Batman needs a Robin. So Tim Drake was the answer, and he fulfilled his role very well.
Yeah.
And he was in very good care with Chuck Dixon and friends who were writing Batman books at this time.
Couple of things to point out for this. The Robin, it's great. The thing that I like the most out of this whole Tim Drake as Robin thing is the line that you've just said, 13th. Batman needs a Robin.
Hmm.
I think that probably, for me right now, that is probably the thing that's missing in current Bat books, and which is making the current Chip Zdarsky run a little bit more interesting because he is working with a Robin again, which
Hmm.
absolutely I love to bits. The other thing to mention, do you know who designed the suit, the Robin suit?
The original one or this one?
This one. Do you know who did it?
No.
It was designed by Neil Adams.
Mm.
So if you check out the issue in which he gets the suit, I think it's a Batman comic with the Scarecrow in it. It says designed by Neil Adams. So Neil Adams, even after all that time, is still having a huge influence. That's the late great Neil Adams. Is still having an influence on what was the modern day Batman universe. So there you go.
Yeah. What I
All
liked
he had to
about
do
these,
was give him pants.
yeah,
Yeah.
what I liked about this era too is like all these creators in their own right, they've stood on their own and created things, and those things have
Mm.
taken off. But when it came to something like the Batman universe, they respected what was already established. They built on it, but they kept
Mhm.
it intact and respected the legacy of Gotham itself. And
Cool.
I think that's why this era is such a phenomenal era for Batman. It's a great entry point. I mean, a lot of these books aren't that expensive, so
Yeah, that's true.
for
It's
those
true.
that want to go out there and then read some Batman books, I highly recommend this era of Batman and onwards. To be
I
honest,
will. I will say a big thank you and shout out to Mrs. H, who a little while ago went out and bought me the 3 issues of Robin where Stephanie Brown was the Robin.
hmm
Thanks, Mrs. H. What can I say? I'm a Steph Brown fan. All right, there you go. 3 up, 3 down. There ain't no replacing us Ol'Timers. So we've had Avengers. We've had a bit of a stay in Gotham. We haven't been in Gotham for ages, although I'm sure the professor will say that we go there every other week.
not long enough,
No,
right?
no. We've had a nice little dry spell from Gotham. That's fine.
Yeah. Now the professor owes me a dry spell from Avengers books.
Mm.
Okay. We can
Oh my god! Next up,
get
it's
away
going to
from Avengers for a while.
Yeah, next we're going Fantastic Four, aren't we? I can just see this coming. All right, so there you go. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, all about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel Comics, and Disney Plus.
There you go. And of course, you've got MPP Sister Show TDC, the Definitive Crusade, which drops on alternate alternate weeks of MPP for everything that is DC and DC related. Sometimes, DC aren't quite as multimedia as Marvel at the moment. So there you go. Who? Migraine. Oh, I've got migraine coming. Said Marvel too many times. All right. I have been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. Thank you, the Professor. Thank you, 13th Crusader.
Of course.
Yeah, cool. And all that's left for me to say is adios.
Peace.